It's so great to be out again. This has been 2 years of presenting behind my screen from my living room, and so I miss the energy. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've got a couple of questions before we get started. One, who has been talking about data in the last couple of days? Okay, who here considers that they have good quality and complete supplier data today in their environment? And we can't see people online, but I'm assuming people are smiling. Who believes that having good quality and complete supplier data is absolutely critical to digital transformation? Can we all admit that we have a big data problem? And for a long, long time, it was sort of garbage in, garbage out, portal potties. If only we could fix the big, the big messy master data. And it's no one's fault, because if you look at the evolution of technology, it made sense. Initially, we did this manually. A lot of organizations use spreadsheets, SharePoint, other mechanism that they would build in-house to trying to address this problem. It's a hard problem because there's a lot of data, there's a lot of suppliers, and it's really difficult to not only access, collect, but also to maintain and upkeep, especially at the level of information that we collect on suppliers globally. What we saw in the past 5 years, and what's so fun for me in some ways, is that 5 years ago when I would speak on stage, CPOs would look at me with pupil dilating and eyes twitching. What are you talking about? Data? You want me to put my data where? I will never put my data in the cloud. And that was 5 years ago as CPO at Procurement Leaders. And I don't know if he still has a job, but I'm pretty sure that he's changed that speech today. But what we saw in the last few years is that suddenly this movement to cloud, right? The S2P moving to the cloud with this promise of digital transformation, this promise of digitizing the ecosystem and fixing data. And unfortunately, what we call the big fat lie is that software does not fix data. Not because you have workflow, not because you implemented software. That means you're going to have good data. And sales and marketing have learned this a long time ago. They bought Salesforce with the promise of we're going to have one view of our customers. We're going to implement this cloud-based technology so everyone has a source of truth. But then you're depending on humans to update information. And unfortunately, humans are not really dependable when it comes to maintaining information. It's also very tactical. So what I put up here is an example. So it's blinded, but it shows the environment of a regular customer who contacts us at Teal to talk about what they call their Frankenstein architecture of today. Typically, it includes legacy systems, either through acquisition. It may be several instances of an ERP. It may be several modules across different S2P. And then a lot of different sort of niche solution for sourcing, for compliance, for third-party risk management, for contract, and the list goes on, and you know the story. Each of those software needs an implementation. Each of those software need clean data to implement it. And then you need to maintain information across those systems. And 98% of those systems need the suppliers to come to it to put information. Again, we're relying on humans to put information into a portal. And we know that suppliers, there's a real portal fatigue. There's more and more systems that are requiring them to maintain hundreds of different records, often in the same solution. Even sometimes with the same customer, they have to go in and populate the same data over and over again. These systems also, they're not integrated to each other. If you integrate them, you're entering a journey that's going to be incredibly expensive. Obviously, the SIs are loving this because they can integrate systems forever, and there's APIs that changes, so that you're always going to have to maintain this. And the problem is that the data that you're connecting, if you can connect it, and I'm hearing a lot in the last couple of days of we're building a data cloud, but you're assuming that the data in those systems is good. And if you connect them to each other, you're probably connecting subpar data, fairly incomplete, right? And so there's not enough ML or AI you can throw on top of that to make it amazing. It may give you some insight, but it won't be significant. It won't be truly impacting your transformation or your strategic objectives. And then I often say to CPO, let's pretend for a second that all your system has amazing data and you connect them to each other. what happens is that you only then know what you know about your relationship to the supplier. And what's happening now, and we're all seeing and experiencing the difference in all the disruption and the growing requirements, is that you don't have perspective of your suppliers with the world, or what you don't know. And then you're still handicapped because your visibility is very, very narrow. So when we're looking at what has failed in digital transformation to date, we pulled the CPO report from Deloitte from last year. And the number one is data quality. We don't have good data. And when you buy one of the SDP or ERP or any of the niche solution and they give you the ROI story, it's assuming you've got good data in that system. So if you don't have good data, or you're waiting for suppliers to come in to put information, your time to value will be significantly extended. And if you end up, yesterday I heard David talking about, I think 50% of the suppliers will interact. I debate that that's a lot lower. Well, you're not getting the ROI of the investment that you've made. Now, those solution has a need. They can accelerate your digital transformation, and we'll see at the end there's a plethora of options. So you need to have the flexibility, but you shouldn't depend on software to build data because you're going to end up with a Frankenstein architecture that won't scale. So from the Deloitte report, we saw, again, low quality data, availability of your data, and then the ROI. How are we quantifying the value of data? Everybody's asked this question. I'm not sure how many people have actually been able to build a proper business case for the value of having quality data. Now, what inspired me, and I don't need to go to all the details, but what I saw is an enormous amount of investment in our suppliers. When we take a company that has 25,000, 75,000, 115,000 suppliers globally, think about the amount of work from sourcing to diligence to onboarding to maintaining records to validating records to integrating those records to paying those suppliers. And if you don't have good data, you can't maximize. To me, it's the biggest untapped asset of the organization, and procurement is sitting on this. So if you can fix this, this could represent hundreds of millions of dollars in value. And when we think of data, it impacts everything. Everything that I consider to be the buy side, across the life cycle, across all functions. And that's the story, and that's the ROI that is really important for procurement to influence, because it's not always that you're going to have the budget, but if you can influence the decision and also articulate the impact of having good data across the life cycle, across different functions, how it impacts the top line and the bottom line, you have a value proposition that gets you the budget to start on a data journey. So we've raised money. If you know us, we just raised $50 million US before the holidays. And we are doubling down our investment in innovation. And what we've been doing for 5 years is, can we use machines and look at data on every B2B company in the world? Can we find interesting things about those companies that would be helpful to the buy side and that would reduce the dependency on suppliers to have to come to portals? So each of those are projects. What qualifies as a B2B company versus a hair salon, right? What about that company is interesting? What did they do? And so we were able to use words and turn that into natural language tags that then supported how we can predict categorization, classification. It supports our search engine, so we do have a discovery offering that allows you to expand your master data to find most similar companies that may be in different countries, that may be sustainable, that may be small and diverse, et cetera. And so those are the pillars that we're focused on. It's been 5 years. It's a journey. We've quadrupled the size of our data engineering team so that we can expand faster and really start extracting what are the derived data. Once you have all this information, can you start exposing things that are increasingly more valuable to our customers? And so here I'm just taking one use case. There's hundreds of them, and I'm sure you've heard them over the last few days. But supplier diversity is something we're really well known for because it's a really fast win. If you think of supplier diversity, especially in global supplier diversity, the complexity of having to identify the requirements, the sources of data, at, again, a speed and a scale that's really difficult to do manually. We've been able to achieve this through machines where a customer, this is a North American customer, so I apologize for the rest of the world, and we are working and expanding for our global footprint. But in this case, what we're showcasing is that a client was accessing supplier certificates through a portal. So again, engaging the suppliers, getting them to come to a portal to put their certificate. And then we know that the reporting process means you have to export your data from your financial systems, you have to clean it, you've got to match it, you've got to validate those certificates. It takes on average 6 to 8 weeks. And what we saw is that in this case, as all of our clients, they were reporting 1% of diverse spend. And upon matching their master data to our platform, we're able to showcase here a pretty significant incremental add-on of 7.8%. That's on day one. That's not by finding more small and diverse suppliers. That's actually lifting the suppliers that you have in your master data that qualify, that are certified, that you haven't captured. And what we're seeing is an uplift of 20 to 300% upon implementation because we are showing 100% of the suppliers, not just the one that came to the portal to put their certificate that you're able to capture. So again, if you can remove the dependency of a small, diverse business to have to put their certificate in your portal and 500 other portals, not only you're helping that business, right, but you're accelerating your reporting process by weeks, and you're giving your organization a major uplift in your diversity goals. Now, with machines, we can also find suppliers that are small and diverse but are not certified. And what shocked me the most when we started doing research is that only 5% of businesses that are small and diverse that would qualify are in fact certified. So you get these big organizations saying we're going to spend, X amount on small diverse businesses, but they're only accounting for the ones that are certified. So you're missing on 95% of the ecosystem, which is the pipeline for innovation. It also contributes to your ESG goals. So this is, again, just a snapshot of one use case. You can translate that to sustainability and other ESG requirements. Again, there's ways to capture this, and typically we start with one use case because we want to first win. In any digital transformation, if you're going to approach this as a data-led transformation versus a portal-based approach, you need to show that win, and showing a 20 to 300% uplift up front creates energy. People are like, wow, what can I see that I couldn't see before? Well, what about all these other things that we're trying to capture? It's also use case where it goes to the CEO, it gets reported in the sustainability report, so it makes procurement, right, showcase a value that before couldn't be able to leverage for the organization. So having that first win creates energy, and then people forget really easily. So how quickly can we start showcasing additional benefit of having, again, a data foundation? So just, remember the architecture we showed you at the beginning, pretty disparate. Where we focus a lot of the investment is in the bottom part, where we're monitoring about 12 million B2B companies. We got 5.2 million profiles. That means our machines have identified enough information. It doesn't mean it's 100% accurate across all attributes. So being transparent about attributes that are more complete than others or higher quality than others is really important. And then working with our customers on the use cases. If it's discovery, you don't need the data to be perfect. You need to point to companies that are most similar, but you're still going to qualify those suppliers. But if you're reporting something like sustainability, diversity, you need to know that those certificates are unified to the right company and that they're refreshed, they're not expired, et cetera. So it really depends on the attributes. Our clients have the flexibility to choose the type of data, and there's two ways they can consume it. They can consume it through their existing software. So if they just want to have that record distributed consistently across their system, that's one option. So we do have partnerships with most of the largest S2P in our industry, and then we have open API for all the other niche solutions. And then we do have an interface. It's a beautiful interface that allows any buyers to access quick information, and it's typically to subsidize the fact that they may need quick contact information. They may need to know who do we do business with today that does X, Y, and Z by relevance, by country, by spend, by connection, by similarity. And so it's a really quick way to access information or do things that are not necessarily easy to do in an S2P or R2P ERP system. So again, not to replace your existing technology stack, but really there to enhance it and enhance the strategic objective of the organization. So we've partnered with Spend Matters. Are you guys familiar with Spend Matters? And so Pierre led this initiative. We want to have a third party to see, hey, how do we start building ROI? Now, what I would say, when I say 100 million, I mean it. There's a lot of value, especially when you're using data to achieve your strategic objective that are not captured here. But we want to know, like, baseline. If our clients, or prospect customers were going to their CFO, how would they build an ROI calculator or build a business case to be able to invest and start that data foundation journey. And so what we want to know is, how can we quantify this? We want to also collect information from third party that they would work with customers. They would establish all the variables of what a data foundation would represent, and then be able to build something that our clients could use to calculate the ROI. And so what we did in this example, so again, this is high level. This is more on the raw sort of ROI of data. Well, we looked at a client that had 25,000 suppliers. Some of our clients have 150,000 suppliers, so you can kind of translate that. And then we picked $1 billion in spend, which is probably a bit low for our average customer. And what we did this, looking at, I think it's about 100 or so variables, is come up with a calculation that will show you a cost avoidance about $4,300,000. Again, if you have 150,000 suppliers, it will be significantly more. And then we had a simple ROI calculator that showed, basically across all of our clients with no real variable, this is what the ROI would be. And then the real ROI would be depending on the complexity of your supply chain, your working capital, your margins, the requirements, the complexity of your compliance requirements, maybe even the conservatism of your CFO based on the numbers that you'd be able to show him. And so if we break this down a little bit more, then we're looking at inefficiency of saving, non-compliance savings, financial loss reduction. So to get a bit deeper in this and some examples on the inefficiency savings, it could be customers that are just spending money cleansing and categorizing their data on a quarterly basis or more often. So it's not uncommon that our clients will send this to a third-party service provider. As we all know, the data comes back and start decaying that very same day, and you have to do this exercise over and over again. Not super insightful either. It comes back so that you can format your data and back into your system. It doesn't give you a lot of context, and so our clients are able to save significant amount of dollars here. Just recently, we're talking to a client. She was spending about $1 to $2 million on market intelligence subscription, and because they had Teal book now, they don't spend nearly this much on our platform. They're able to access a supplier at their fingertips 90% faster to go to a sourcing event. So because we have a search engine that takes the master data of our client and expands it, we look at 300 different dimensions of what makes a supplier similar or not to one another. And so we accelerate that discovery process 90% faster than traditionally. And so here you can talk about the cost savings from having to buy these subscriptions to the amount of time and efficiency that you would save going into a sourcing event times the number of sourcing event times the number of resources that you need. So again, we have a fantastic BV team. So this is a business value engineering team. And when clients or prospect customers are contacting us and they're starting to get into this data foundation journey, which I'm repeating a journey because it's a journey, they will sit with our sales team, with our BV team will come in, and they will establish an ROI based on the use cases, based on the complexity of your organization, based on the number of suppliers, based on what's the priority for the organization so that we can have a first win and something that our customers can go and articulate so that they can start building the budget, so that they can start building their strategy towards a data foundation. Who's seen this slide? This is the Kearney slide if you're not looking at it. Only a few people. Shocking. So this is Eloise Epstein, if you know her from Kearney. She published this about a year and a half ago. So that slide has evolved. Don't get overwhelmed. The point of this slide is that there's a lot more technology providers that are coming up. We've all seen them. They're all here. Fantastic technology. I was a judge last year at Digital Procurement World. I think there was 80 startups that had been nominated. And so I got the pleasure to judge, I think, 20 to 30 companies. And I'd say that 98% of those providers relied on suppliers to come to a portal to update the information. And so again, I think if you were on my talk yesterday, it was sort of asking the first provider, this is great, love the circular economy pitch, or the other one would come in on carbon emission calculation, the other one would come in on something else related to ESG, and when you ask them, how are you getting the data into your solution, they give you 100 reasons why the suppliers will be coming to their solution because X, Y, and Z. And then you had the CPO on the judging panel with me that after the third company, they were starting to ask, how do you get the data into your tool? And then they would tll you why the suppliers would come to their tool. And it became so clear. right? That if you depended on suppliers to come to your solution, there's probably 10, 20, in some case maybe a lot more tools to address all the different parts of your life cycle and function based on the digital requirements. It's going to be an endless effort to have the suppliers come in. And we're not saying they shouldn't come in, because there's things that they're going to be putting into information that maybe you can't autonomously enrich. Maybe they need to come and validate because of your compliance requirements. But if you're making that the exception versus the rule, and they're coming into a pre-populated profile with all their information that's 80 to 95% accurate, they can go in and validate, or they can subsidize. But you're not always asking them to do the same things, and that record that is refreshed can also be distributed into other systems, so that when a buyer goes into maybe a marketplace, maybe it's a payment system, maybe it's a contract system, that they can see that that supplier is in fact, with the right address, with the right information, the right contact information, updated certification for ISO or sustainability or diversity. And that's really the power of having a coordinated effort on your data strategy. And so we had the pleasure last year that Eloise put us in the middle of that data foundation. I think it's really important to be able to capitalize on all these new solutions. Procurement should have the flexibility to buy those software, but you should not have to live with your decision. If there are other tools coming in the market that are smarter contract as the technology advances, smarter sourcing that you should be able to plug and play, you should be able to increase the time of value of the implementation of that solution. You should be able to increase compliance because the information is not dependent on suppliers to come to the solution to get the value, get your buyers to access the right data, and then you're maximizing the ROI that you have made on those investments with those providers. This also allows you to build a more flexible, more interchangeable, and agile technology ecosystem that reflects where we're going, right? Not the first slide that I showed you, that doesn't scale. So again, it's the importance of, do you have a coordinated data foundation? If you're building it yourself, you're probably incurring some challenges that we would have probably solved or in the process of solving with our clients, because everything we do is spent just to ensure that the data is autonomously collected, enriched, and distributed. So to be able to leverage all the research that we've done, all the innovation that we've done with our customers is a powerful way to supercharge the effort that you're probably already doing internally. So again, I said at the beginning, 5 years ago, I spoke about what I did, and Simon from Proxima, I don't know if he's here, he's like, I have to admit, 5 years ago or 4 years ago, I didn't understand what you did, what Teal quite did, but now I get it, right? So I think that the conversation around data and what we've seen when COVID hit, not only customers would reach out to us because they needed information at the speed and at the scale that they couldn't possibly deliver on their own. We saw also a massive wave of all the technology providers that had sold that they could deliver good data, but because it was dependent on people and suppliers to come to it, they just couldn't deliver, again, at the speed, at the type of visibility and access that we could. And so suddenly we had this massive pipeline of technology providers that came to us to be able to embed our data in their solutions so that they could accelerate the time to value and increase, ultimately, the ROI of their system and deliver on this promise of good data to their customers. And so, the journey from 5 years to now, it's quite rewarding to be in this position because we all know the importance of it. We're super excited. We start 5 innovation projects with our customers. We're mostly large Fortune 1000 customers. We're just excited to roll up their sleeves and work with us on the future. And we hope that you can, in your organization, leverage our capabilities in our team. So if you are interested in the ROI, we do have the ROI calculator on our website. It's fairly basic, but it will give you a sense based on your environment. And then our team would be really happy to work with you specifically to build that business case for your organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stephany. Great way to end today and indeed the whole show. Now, I will be asking questions from people on the floor, so if you have a question, please put your hand up and we'll get a microphone over to you. But I do have some questions here. Actually, yeah, let's take a question down here, please. If you do that, Mike. If you just start by stating your name and where you're from, please.
Hi, Stephany. James from procurementsoftware.site. Quick question regarding the calculator. I think as procurement professionals, we've all battled with the fact that CFOs are notoriously commercially illiterate when it comes to recognizing non-P&L savings. have you had that battle as well with them, or how is that going down with the financial community?
Well, that's why we did it, because that's what our customers needed, is to build that business case for CFO. So it gets into much more sort of hard numbers, tangible savings, more than just the efficiency gain from like saving 40 hours of sourcing. So even like the collection of record, maintaining records, cost avoidance around sort of fines and things like this, or things that tangibly our customers can showcase as CFO. And it's quite conservative, right? I say hundreds of millions, but you saw here 4 million. And that's the purpose, is we want this to make sure that when you're having the conversation with your CFO, it's believable, it's hard facts, and you're able to get the budget on that first. Then you can showcase more wins, like when you see the impact you can have on something like Supplier Diversity, or we have a client who saved $25 million in one sourcing event because the category manager had the information to positively influence a decision in that conversation with the stakeholder to go and find 6 additional suppliers to bid, where otherwise he would have not had the data to have, that impact. And saving $25 million was a really, that's a pretty big win. So those are more, ad hoc, I'd say, but this is what we need to do, is to showcase something that was tangible, believable for a CFO that would be fairly conservative to want to invest in data.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, you talked about supplier diversity in some of your slides there. A question that's come in from the virtual audience says, how can Tealbook's data be used to support a company's ESG journey?
Yeah, so ESG, as you know, it's really broad. Supplier diversity, we know what we're looking for, and so we often say, like in ESG, it's like you're looking at like a needle in a haystack, but you don't even know if it's a needle or like a grain of salt. So it's a kind of maybe a bad analogy, but there's a lot of standard, there's a lot of different requirements. And so what we've started to do, working with our customers, this is in beta still, is that we've developed a survey. And when I tell our customers, like, we're really anti-survey, but in this case, it's proven to be quite helpful to help our large customers standardize what they want to collect from suppliers across multiple companies, multiple industries, so that we could create some consistency in something that was valuable and that could actually be collected through automation in the future. And so an example of one of our clients, they started this initiative. Suppliers have come in and uploaded up to 18 documents around all the ESG requirements that they're trying to collect. And now we're already looking, how can we go after this data in an autonomous way and start pre-populating these fields across tens to hundreds of thousands of companies. So it's sort of a way to see the information, standardizing ESG for our clients, but very quickly looking at innovation. It could be data sources, it could be data partnership, which we haven't relied so much on other people's data. So far, we've seeded all of our own data. We're starting to look at ingesting other data that maybe we could advance our research, or maybe this is something that already exists that we don't necessarily need to recreate that would add a lot of value. It could also be an ML project that our ML team would be specifically looking at to leverage maybe a narrow network and come back and be able to fulfill those records. So that's what we're doing with ESG. We do have partnerships with EcoVadis, and when I think of EcoVadis, they do really well, high quality, but it's not 100% of the ecosystem. And so if you have, maybe you capture with EcoVadis 10 to 20% of your suppliers, they've been through the EcoVadis process, they have been audited, you have high quality here, but we can expose the other 80 to 90% sustainable suppliers that you not necessarily have seen. It would be really hard to access, and maybe they haven't gone through EcoVadis. So it's a great way to access those suppliers. If you need them to be certified by EcoVadis, you can then invite and tell them why they should do this, or you may want to recognize them for being sustainable and include them in your report, especially that we bring the actual record in the profile of Tealbook, so you can spot check it, you can do quality on it, you can even validate that record directly on our solution.
Okay, and the supplier visibility that Tealbook can bring, is that essential for a business, that supplier visibility in the next 5 years to be successful?
I'd ask you guys. I think it's essential. Again, it comes back to you're spending so much money, you have thousands and thousands of suppliers globally, and you can't optimize this asset. I think it's such a miss, and that's what inspired me to build Tealbook. I was seeing the amount of investment going to one supplier, now times 25,000, times 100,000, some, maybe 80% of those suppliers are not even active, but you're maintaining records and you would like to know when you want to engage them that the information is still accurate, I think it's a massive miss, and it's a huge opportunity for procurement to bring value to the organizations and their organization in ways that we've never seen before.
Okay, and you've mentioned there some large organizations that you're working for in terms of the tens of thousands of suppliers they have. Could this also be used for smaller organizations, or are you solely aimed at those large-scale ones?
You know, I mean, we have, and what's really, so one of our innovation projects is around tiering visibility. There's ways to go and find data for tiering suppliers, and so we're definitely doing this in parallel. But our clients for Tier 2 supplier diversity, because we automate reporting, they wanted their own suppliers to be able to do this without having to build the infrastructure to report their own diverse spend. And so it's been free for suppliers to upload their master data. They get an aggregated view of their diverse spend by classification, and they can assign a portion of that spend directly in Tealbook to their customers, so it automatically gets incorporated into our customers' diversity reporting, and it gets tracked also the progress over time, which drives accountability and ownership. What's been really interesting is that those suppliers now are like, hey, I'm seeing a lot more spend than I reported before, or they may have never reported diversity, and they see this now as a competitive advantage. And so now we've seen the companies, those suppliers, start to buy Tealbook to start basically building their own diversity initiative. In this case, inviting their own suppliers to do the same. So it's a nice seed into supplier tiering visibility. It makes the biggest impact for our customers, and now we're starting to convert more the mid-size companies that are looking at ways to either increase a competitive advantage on the sales side or simply be able to reach their own diversity objective.
Okay, well, look, we've talked about data a lot over the last couple of days, and everyone's talked about how essential it is right now. So I think it's great to end the whole conference here looking at a solution that can implement and take that data and really help to transform procurement and obviously supply chain.